we've got our own range of accents up here as well. We got the Yoopers,
What's the Yoopers?
the Yoopers, yeah, their age. So they sit there, and oh boy, hot cheese. So we're sitting there, and I'm sitting on the deer stand and I'm taking a shot, right? And I spill my beer all over. Oh yeah, hot, yeah, hot cheese, but I'm
Okay, so that's that. What's the next one?
otherwise, well, that's the main one. We don't hear it. I didn't hear it until when I was a kid. I went south. My mom had a friend in Texas, so we went to Texas. We took the train,
Mm-hmm.
and I went down there, and very, very thick Southern accents down there.
Yep.
And I love accents as well. And they said, "Wow, you kind of talk funny," because we're kids, right? And
Yeah.
I never knew, because you're around the same people that talk like
Over and
yourself,
yeah.
so you don't notice really that accent till you go elsewhere. You know,
I love that you say no,
no,
notice,
yeah,
and it's the
no,
oh kind of thing. That's great. Well, for me, I find that so I would say you said that they're strong Southern accents. So
mhm.
Texans never say they're from the South. They say that they're
They're
from
from
Texas.
Texas. Yeah.
So their accent is not Southern, it is a
It's
Texas accent. That is how prideful we are, and I back it up 100%, not just because I'm from there, but because the state is so big
mhm.
that it's basically larger than most of New England and most European countries. So of course there's going to be different Texas accents, but
Yeah.
I discovered what made a Texas accent when I went to school up here in New York,
Mhm.
because I was going to musical theater school, and one of the things that we're taught is we go to like a dialect coach teacher that teaches us American Standard, because that's the most newscasters will get taught American Standard is like this flat American accent where it's really hard to discern where they are
Mm-hmm.
and where they're from. So most people are just taught American Standard, but Texans, it's more about placing it. So if I start placing my right here,
Right
then I
there. Yeah.
start seeing that Texas, if there's R's in a word, then the R's are they're
They're
gonna be
gonna
the most prominent thing in the word that they're saying.
sure.
And they also are terrible with consonants. So like sometimes I also a lot of people think that Southerner accents they're very slow and they have a drawl. Texans mostly talk faster than Southerners. So my
Oh, okay.
brother, who is, still lives in Texas, born in
Sure.
Texas like me, he'll answer the phone and be like, "Hi, Victoria, what are you doing?" I was just, I was over here teaching the kids, and I was just like going a million miles an hour, and
Mhm.
the consonants are getting dropped. So I have to tell him to slow down. It's like, back up. What did you say? Um, so that's another, there you go. We're just going to talk about accents for the
We're
rest of the
we're just gonna, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
So there,
Well,
I digress.
well, I have that problem too, because I love accents. I try to mimic them. I usually do them poorly, but one of my jobs when I quit it a number of years ago, but I used to work for Land's End and answer phones in the catalog, take catalog orders before the internet got big, because
Oh
I'm that
wow.
old. But um I occasionally I would get the British person or whatnot.
Yes.
And my problem is I like picking up accents. So they'll start talking to me and I'll be like, "Oh, really? And would you like that?" And I'm like, "Oh
Yep.
crap." I'm like, yeah, sitting there and I'm like, I try not to slip into the accent they're saying, because usually I can parrot it fairly well. And then I'm like, okay, no, I don't want to do that because I don't want them to think I'm making fun of them. You know,
Yeah, but they say the best way to learn an accent is to mimic what you hear,
sure.
and so you
Mhm.
should be engulfing yourself in the culture and stuff
Right.
like that. One thing my teacher actually kind of taught me too that was really interesting about where accents come from. It depends on the altitude
Mm,
and it depends on how much water is in the air. So a lot of Southerners sound like they have a drawl because there's so much moisture in the air that it automatically slows down your speech, and it's harder to phrase consonants because
sure.
it's just so hot and
Mhm.
there's so much humidity, and that can cause it. And then people up north sound a little frigid because it's colder, so they're talking a lot
Mhm.
faster. So I thought that was kind of interesting too.
Yeah, that is. I hadn't even thought about that with moisture in the air. I mean, we get we get frozen moisture up here. But
But it also depends on the air quality too. So it
true.
also affects your speech.
Mhm,
If you're higher up in
mhm.
altitude, it also factors into how much air you're breathing in when you speak.
Oh,
You know, the deeper. So again, it's water, it's altitude, it's how much air you're taking in that affects how temperature. All of that are factors into how you talk.
as well as how much cheese we consume. No, just kidding.
Yeah. That's another thing. I love cheese, but I'm just
Mhm.
wondering, how much do you love cheese?
Oh, we've got a fridge full of cheese.
Really?
Always full of cheese. Oh yeah.
Okay, but what's your go-to cheese?
Oh, my go-to cheese. Ooh, it's tough. It's whatever is usually on sale you grab, but I really like Gouda. I personally like Gouda
Oh,
and
Gouda is good.
sharp cheddar. My wife loves extra sharp cheddar.
Ooh,
So
extra
yeah,
sharp. That's intense.
yeah, she likes extra sharp cheddar. In fact, I think we've got a brick of like 5-year-old cheddar, aged cheddar up in the fridge. So
5-year old?
yeah.
And there's
Oh yeah.
wait, how does it not mold? Like
They
what's
Well, I mean, there's enzymes in it, but it's the way they package it and everything, and
oh.
it's the process. I'm not too familiar with how to make it. I just know how to eat it.
Okay,
So,
great. That's good.
so but cheese curds. Anyone who comes up here, you tell them you got to have the cheese curds, and they go, "What are cheese curds?" And you go, "Well, you could get them deep fried, or you could get them fresh." The deep fried cheese curds are the best. And they're like, what is that? I'm like, you've got to have them. So if you've never had deep fried cheese curds, you need to have deep fried cheese curds.
I've never had deep fried cheese
Oh,
curds.
oh,
I
you
am
take
What do you do? What do you
it's
take?
it's a ball of cheese that gets
Uh-huh.
put into breading. Depending on which bar you go to, depends on which one, what, whether or not they use beer batter or some kind of batter, and then they deep fry them. So they're just basically balls or of cheese that are deep fried, either in a very light breading or a thicker breading, depending on where you're
So
at.
it's mozzarella sticks, but in a ball, but not
Kind
mozzarella.
of, but not mozzarella. It's usually cheddar. It's usually cheddar or some other variation of the cheese curd. Or you could get them fresh because we have so many small like cheese factories in the area. If you go in the morning, you could get squeaky cheese curds, which actually squeak when you eat them. And
Really?
they're usually at the gas stations and at the grocery stores, and they tend to go, and they're
This is
fresh.
blowing my mind. Now I just want cheese. Okay, but what's your preferred way of eating cheese? Do you like to just kind of slice them and eat them as they are? Does it depend on the cheese? Are you a bread or cracker cheese person? Are you
Oh,
like
not
a melted nacho cheese person? Are you a mac and cheese How do Wisconsins eat mac and cheese?
yes, no. We eat it in all sorts of ways. Some burgers, it usually goes, if you got a burger, 9 times out of 10 you're going to get cheese on it. Some people put American cheese. Other people, like myself and our family, we slice up bricks of cheese, either cheddar jack, which is Monterey Jack and cheddar mixed
Ooh,
together,
that
or
sounds fascinating. Now I'm so hungry. Okay, cheddar jack. Never. I mean, I eat
yeah.
pepper jack. I really love pepper jack.
Oh yeah, me too.
Are you guys good at like a charcuterie board? Like, what's your
Oh yeah.
charcuterie board like layout like?
Oh, it varies, but you usually have a cheddar on there and a Gouda of some kind. A smoked cheddar sometimes can be on there, or smoked Gouda. Smoked Gouda is really good. I really like smoked Gouda.
Okay, all right.
We also have an Italian seasoned cheddar, Gouda, excuse me, Italian seasoned Gouda, which yeah, it tastes delicious. It's got some Italian seasonings mixed in. It's called something like Summer Willow or something. I forgot what the exact name of it is, but there's a Gouda factory on the way to where my kid goes to college. So we stop by there every so often, pick some cheese up. So
Oh man, now I want to know how you eat your pizza.
like anyone else, there's a large variety of pizzas. We get cheese fries up here too, which are the best. Portesi cheese fries, which is
What?
basically like a pizza crust, a
Uh-huh.
thicker pizza crust with garlic butter sauce, or a garlic sauce, and then lots of cheese, mozzarella cheese on it usually, and then you bake it, you cut it up into strips, and you dip it in marinara sauce.
Dude, what?
Yeah.
What? I mean, look, I live up in New York and we are the pizza capital of the world,
Sure.
basically, you know,
Mhm.
but like, wow, that sounds delicious. I bet you it sucks being vegan in Wisconsin.
There's vegan option as well, but yeah, there's not
But
as
doesn't it
many,
even
but
taste good?
eh, you know,
Yeah, I saw your face. I saw your face. The answer is no.
no. Hey, different tastes for different people, right?
Yeah, sure, sure.
I mean,
All right.
just like your show, right? Beverages with Bevin.
Oh, look at you and your segue. I love that for you.
You got different tastes. I managed to catch a couple of shows. In all honesty, what I spent a lot of time is I binged Adultish, which
Oh, wow.
I binged it, and I I got into it, and I'm like, oh my god, this show is fantastic. And then I caught a couple. I was able to catch a couple of episodes of your Beverages with Bevin,
Oh,
and I enjoy the vibe of that as well, and what you're doing, and looking at your work too. It's like, man, I was fascinated by everything that you've been involved with so
oh,
far.
thanks.
You know, and the things that you cover and geekdom and you know everything in geekdom basically. You've kind of traversed the spectrum of all things, but with Beverages and Bevin, I liked your motivation, and not just because I'm from Wisconsin. Okay, though,
Sure.
you know, we do have our beverages, which if you ever come to Wisconsin, you know, you got to have the brandy old fashioned, and
Ah,
we
love old fashions. I'm there.
in fact, Wisconsin, Drink Wisconsinably, which is started off as a small group, and is they've got their own brand of merchandise and their own brand of beverage.
Wow.
They have a canned uh brandy old fashioned
Mm-hmm.
in a can, and it's delicious. It's like smooth. It's like, what? Yeah.
You guys have a Comic-Con up there? I'm coming.
we used to. We used to. Actually, I covered a comic. It was my one and only Comic Con I covered. It was in Madison, Wisconsin. It was held by Wizard World. It wasn't an official, like,
Oh,
you know,
yeah, and Wizard World is no longer.
yes. And Wizard World is no longer for many reasons. Uh,
Sure.
which,
Michael Dolce, one of the guests on the show, used to work for Wizarding World as
mhm.
well. I can't remember if it's FanX or Fan Expo now that is Wizarding
I,
World Comic Cons.
I
I
think
think
it's Fan Expo. I think it's Fan Expo. I'm
I
not
think
sure.
it's Fan Expo as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm more of the movie guy than you know the comic con scene, but since nowadays movies and comics go together, uh
Correct.
you know, it's like they can't escape each other.
No, they really
Um
can't.
you know, and I noticed that, you know, that comes up in your first episode you did with Beverages
Hmm.
with Bevin, where you interviewed one of the comic book men, and he mentioned that how, you know, Comic-Con, remember when it used to cover comics?
So the story behind that too is that we filmed at San Diego Comic-Con, and that was the week that the actors went on strike. So therefore, a lot of
Oh.
the panels backed out. And
Mhm.
so a lot of the talent was just not there. So it really did become an actual Comic-Con again. And that's why I asked Ming,
Mhm.
who's wonderful and hilarious, and just he really is every fucking where.
Sure.
He goes to every single Comic-Con imaginable. He is the pro expert on any sort of con life, which is
Mhm.
why he's in the first episode. Yeah, we were talking about the fact that it was just all comic books at this point because a lot of Hollywood bailed
Yeah.
because of the writer strike, but also the
Mhm.
actor strike. So there was really nobody could legally advertise anything, you know.
Which I'm sure the comic book fans probably enjoyed, you know, the fact that, oh, hey, look.
Yeah, there was pros and cons. I think there were
Mhm.
so like San Diego Comic Con has gotten the reputation of being the Hollywood Comic Con,
Mhm.
whereas like the medium tiered Comic Cons are still very much leaning into the Comic Con culture. And
Sure.
it's for sure New York Comic Con does have a bit of Hollywood in it as well. But there's just so Artist Alleyway in New York Comic Con is just so massively large because that's the birth of comics is in
Sure.
New York Comic Con, basically.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if there was more comics than film in New York Comic Con, because I again I binged Adultish, and I caught your your episode where you're trying to get into the New
Yeah.
York Comic Con.
That was fun. The security guard, it was clearly, not clearly. We went on the last day,
Sure.
and it was, Sundays they close down early normally
Mhm.
at any con. They
Right.
usually have a shorter day on Sundays because you have to, have to pack up. And you could tell that the the security was like so happy that it was the last day. So we found two guys who were like, "Hey, it's the last day. You excited?" They're like, "Yeah." I was like, "You want to pretend to kick out my friend here?" And they're like, "Yes."
You comic geeks are so easy. Yeah, we'll love to kick someone out.
Yeah, we'll kick somebody out. It was very funny.
Mm.
Oh, they had the best time ever. Yeah. God, I love the community. They're so happy to be there. Most of them are happy to be there most of the time,
Mhm.
and then they're even more excited to leave when you're the security team and you've been dealing with them all weekend long. And when I say all weekend, I mean Wednesday night most
Yeah.
of the time.
And I mean, you cover all aspects of that, and I'm not kidding, folks out there. I mean, Victoria, you're involved in every Screen Crush. You've written, articles. You've done all of this within the geekdom, and I
Mhm.
think it's a great aspect that you're bringing to the community and bringing it to light. And even with beverages with Bevin, because you interview so many people, but they're in short, digestible morsels, which we know today's demographic loves thanks to TikTok.
Yeah.
Y-
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, the purpose is to advertise people from all walks of the fandom community. So
Mhm.
it's not just about, the actors or the directors or the producers, although some of them are there. The intention is to highlight, in the first episode you see that I interview somebody whose job is to staff the pop-up events that they see at the con.
Sure.
Then you have, I interview several people that are comic book writers. I got a bunch of IDW publishing people that write for, Star Trek and Marvel. And then you, of course, have the Funko family, and they own several different properties.
Sure.
Besides Funko, two of them are Mondo and Loungefly. And so I got to talk to them as well. And then you just, there's a couple of cosplayers I got to talk to that, have a different perspective on why the fandom community is so important. And the goal is just to kind of talk to everyone and give them a platform to talk about themselves, because they normally don't get the
Mhm.
platform. Like press in general, they press will cover them, but not to the extent of they get like their 5 minutes to talk about who they
Sure.
are, kind of
Sure.
thing.
Yeah, I found your interview. I think that was over the gin and tonic with the IDW chief
Heather, yeah.
editor. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Heather was great too, because she's somebody that's responsible for a lot of different types of properties
Mhm.
that people read. And nobody really knows what that job description is of being a group editor, a senior editor.
Sure.
I think she's a group editor now. We made a
Mhm.
joke about the fact that I just got promoted. We're like, great. Tell me what that is again. I still don't know what you do. Yeah, and it's great when you sit down with somebody to have a drink with them.
Mhm.
um their true personality comes out, and you get to know the person behind the product. And I say
Sure.
that a lot because I think that's the goal of the show, is to get to know the person behind
Mhm.
the product that they're advertising, whether the product even be themselves. And so it's fun to feed them a drink that they would thoroughly enjoy, whether that be a gin and tonic or a Voodoo Ranger beer or
Mhm.
coffee or tea if
Or
you're me.
tea. Nothing wrong with coffee or tea. There you go. I got into coffee. My wife was a big coffee drinker, but she also works at a winery as well.
Ooh.
So she's gotten me into coffee and wine. So I never used to drink either, and she's got me into both. So uh
I actually do love wine, and actually,
mm,
I don't think anybody in this first season chose wine. If I'm
mm,
recalling correctly, it's a bunch of coffees, it's water, cocktails, beer. Yeah, I don't think anybody chose wine this round. That's it. Next season, I got to pick somebody that wants wine.
there you go. Yeah, and it's one of those things where you're actually one of the only not directly movie people that I've interviewed, actually.
Yeah.
I usually cover a lot of movie stuff, but I did talk to a producer, a person who was specifically a producer, though they did do some acting, much like yourself, many hats.
Yep.
And I learned what producers do, and I have mad respect, and not sure, you know, why you would want to be a producer because of the sheer volume of work you have to do. And you're in front of the camera as well. I mean, how do you juggle all of that? Because I know when I talked to him, he said that it was tough sometimes to be in front of the camera, behind the camera, working on locations, working on talent. I mean, how do you manage to juggle all of that?
Well, you definitely don't do it alone. So if you pay
Mhm.
attention to the credits, there's several producers that are
Sure.
normally listed, and that's just
Mhm.
because the job is so daunting.
Sure.
And the term producer can mean an array of things that you kind of have to have more than one. And I have two on Beverages with Bevin, and they're both named Chris. So that's fun in Zoom meetings or when we're in person. I
Sure.
normally just call them by their last name at that point, or I just point and go, "Hey, you, I met this Chris." So I'm very thankful that I have people in my corner that
Mhm.
are wanting to share the load, if you will.
Sure.
And I also think too, being a really good producer is knowing how to pick your team, how to pick your
Mhm.
tribe, like knowing who best would shoot the show, who would help with post production, who would, oversee color grading,
Right.
edits, making sure the talent gets notified, there's, enough press materials getting out there, kind of thing. So it's a group effort. For anybody that says that they do it alone, they're a stand-up comedian. And
Sure.
even then, I'm
Sure.
not even sure I would believe them, because in order to
Right.
be a successful stand-up comedian, you also have to have your entourage, if you will.
Right.
Great
Right.
show for people that don't know. You should watch Entourage, and then you'll see that, oh, an actor has like 6 people behind him.
Yeah, it's not just for comedic relief or whatever when you see it in the movies and they have their people following them with different phones and everything. No, that's reality. That is how those things are.
It's no different than if you were at like a job that had a CEO. He's
Sure.
got,
Mhm.
I wouldn't call them minions, but he's got like
Right.
assistants and
Mhm.
partners and vice presidents and all that stuff to kind of help oversee everything
Mhm.
that goes on. It's the same thing with the show. It's like a mini small business. Think of each individual show as a mini small business.
You do have a lot of business going on with these ones because of the amount of, like I said, the amount of guests you have on each show. I was very impressed with. Do you Are these folks all folks that you're familiar with and met in the past, or is it like, do you have a dream list of people that you kind of reach out to, or?
Ooh. I mean, there's definitely bucket list people that I would love to sit down and have a
Sure.
drink with.
Mhm.
One of them unfortunately passed away, and
Mm.
but I did actually get to talk with him several times, and that was Kevin Conroy,
Oh
who's
yeah.
the animated voice of Batman, my Batman, rest in peace, Kevin Conroy.
Best Batman. Best
Best
Batman.
Batman. I even wrote that article on Screen Crush. Kevin Conroy, the best Batman, is my story, because I think it's now been retitled "Rest in Peace, Kevin Conroy, the best
Mm,
Batman." It was actually written before he passed away, and then we retitled it after. It
mm,
was soon and early enough after
sure.
I had written it that we had retitled it. But that was wonderful to get to talk to him. Sweetest man alive. I wish I could have put him on Beverages with Bevin,
Sure.
because he was such a talker that his poor handler, every time he would be in some sort of like press room, the handler would try and tell press, "Can you just ask him one question, please? We're behind. Can you ask him one question?"
Mhm.
And then, I would ask the question, "Does Batman kill? Yes or no?" And then he goes, "No, I don't think Batman kills, because the psychological," like, and he would just go into a, a very elongated
Mhm.
response. And his poor, I could just see at the corner of the eye. I was loving it, but the handler was like,
Not this question.
I was like, "Look, I said yes, or I was prompting a yes or no.
Yeah.
I can't help it if he wants to keep going. You talk to him." You know?
Uh,
But yeah, so in terms of, to answer the first
yeah.
part of your question, which was the first season, did I know these people ahead of time, or did I, were
Mhm.
they brand new? Most of the people at San Diego Comic Con, I did not know.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's kind of no, well, it's kind of evident And with some of them, one of my favorite conversations I had with somebody at San Diego Comic-Con was the famous YouTuber Greg from Real Rejects. What was so great about him is that he, being a millennial, got the email that explained what was going to happen, knew Ryan Ari of Screen Crush, and Ryan Ari just said, yeah, just show up, it'll be fine. Took that, walked in, had no idea what was going on, and it was so entertaining because he sat down, he chose his beer that he was going to drink, and most of our interview, when you watch it, I believe it's episode 5, if you've not seen it yet, is him just asking me questions like, so wait, is this is my camera, this is your camera, should I be sucking in? Like, it's hilarious. And then at one point he was like, what are we grabbing the rope on? And he's just like, oh, I really like your hair. It's just so natural, and it's so genuine and sincere. And it's a different side of him, because normally on his YouTube channels, he's practiced what he's going to talk about. He's presentational. He's in the know of what's going on. And this is him sitting down going, oh, I should have read this email. Okay, great. I'm just here. Let's just go for it. And there's a clip actually on my Instagram account of me kind of clipping the part where he's just like, so is all of this staying in? I was like, I don't know, it just depends. And he's like, I want all of this to stay in. And I put it in the clip being like, here you go, Greg. All of this stayed in. And that was lovely. So I didn't know him, clearly, and that's evident in the it's evident in the interview. But I did know Brian Volkweiss, and we do kind of make that evident too, because I work with the nacelle company, so I did know him. Most of the people at New York Comic Con I did know ahead of time. There's maybe 5 of them I didn't know. Ahead of time, but they were connected to somebody that I did know. My grandfather always used to say, it's not what you know, it's who you know and how you foster that relationship. And the Comic-Con community, if you're kind and considerate and you're genuinely interested in who they are, you can just kind of start building out your family of people that you know. And so it's kind of more about going there to socialize over buying a comic, or you should buy comics, guys.
Yes.
Support them, but it's more about, going to see your friends than buying a Funko Pop, which, again, support going to buy Funko Pop.
I support them in another way. I got into vinyl collecting about 6 years ago, so I've got a number of Mondos in my collection. Yes.
So you should definitely watch that interview, because I interviewed both of the guys that are heading it, and they were also a delight, and they also don't know where that name comes from, and it's very funny. They go back to back. I believe that's episode 4. Hilarious. They are wonderful. Love them. They told me that there's going to be a Hey Arnold vinyl. At least I'm manifesting that, because I want that so badly. But anyways, so yeah. In terms of the second part of your question was, or I guess the second question you asked was, do I have somebody on my bucket list that I would love to interview? And the answer is, of course. I would love to sit down with the 4 hobbits, but separately.
Sure. But separately, because it's going to be chaos if you have them together.
Yeah, the show is designed to feel intimate, and if there's 4 of them, because again, going back to the Mondo guys, it was offered to have both of them go at the same time, and I said, nope, they have to go separately. Same thing with the writing team from IDW, Jackson and Colin. They're used to getting interviewed together. I was like, ooh, I'm going to break you out of your comfort zone. You have to go back to back. And that's just because I want to have an illusion of a one-on-one experience. Oh, we're not illusion. We're having a one-on-one experience, except the cameras are rolling. There's people watching us, but I would rather have a one-on-one experience. And I think the 4 hobbits love those films, would love to talk to them. They do actually do a lot of fan expos. So I'd love to chat with them. Who else would I just, oh man, if I could talk to Bruce Timm.
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
Bruce Timm would be fantastic. And yes, of course, I'll say Mark Hamill too. That's, I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but I feel like that's an easy, like
Sure. Hmm.
it's an answer that everyone would say. Who wouldn't want to talk to Mark Hamill? Like,
Right. But
you
well,
know,
Bruce Timm would be great because I mean, for me, I will die on the hill that Batman the Animated Series is probably one of the best animated series to come out ever.
yeah,
Uh and I'm from the 80s of Saturday morning, Starcade and that. So Voltron and GI
yeah.
Joe and G1 Transformers, I grew up on those. I consumed those constantly. But I will still say when Batman the Animated Series came out, I was just graduating. I was in high school at that time, and I love every episode. Actually, I've got it on Blu-ray. My buddy picked it up with the little Funko
Aw,
mini pops in it,
yeah.
as well as it came with the Mask of the Phantasm, which is still one of the
Great
best.
Batman film.
It's still one of the great Batman films,
Yeah,
and everything about animated series just brought it together. And it's fun because that series influenced the comics as much as Batman 89 influenced superhero movies going
yeah.
forward. They kind of both did at the same time, and it was Batman. All right, yeah.
I have a slight unpopular opinion, and I only mean slight because
No,
people
that's
still love this animated series.
sure.
I technically slightly prefer Justice League animated series over
I can see
Batman
that.
animated series.
I can.
And the reason being is
Mhm,
because Kevin Conroy is my favorite Batman. I
mhm,
really enjoyed how much they opened up his Batman
mhm,
in Justice League
mhm,
animated series because it wasn't just a noir kind of feel. He has to interact with so many different personalities, and there are
mhm.
times that he's sarcastic. There are times that he's like there's this one episode. I don't know if you watched the animated series, Justice League animated series.
I have watched some of them. Yeah.
There is one episode that actually Mark Hamill comes in as the Joker, where Batman gets kidnapped
Mm,
by Lex
mhm,
Luthor and
mm,
the gang that it's not the Legion of Doom because they didn't
right.
bring that in until Justice League Unlimited the last season. But like Lex Luthor has cancer and he's trying to break into Batman's utility belt, and Batman is just like doing his thing where he's outsmarting Gorilla Grodd, not Gorilla Grodd, it's Humanite.
Humanite. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's flirting with uh Cheetah, and then I'm like blanking on everyone that's
Mm.
there. Then there's Shade that's there as well. And like Batman is just kind of proving why he's awesome is that he's the only person that's human, and yet he's the smartest person in this room, and he's outwitting everybody, and it's great.
Yeah.
I love it so much. I just love Batman in the Just League's animated series, and I also just think it was such a really well written
Mhm.
series.
Well, I mean, their whole that whole chain of what sparked off with Warner Brothers animation of the animated series, and then you got Superman in there
Yeah,
as well, and then it just kind of they expanded, and they had that wonderful kind of second golden age of animation of sorts for that while, where you had all this stuff. And even today, and I will still say it, I don't I have a reputation among some of the critic friends. One of them, Annie Banks. But I talked to her that and of being the DC shill because I like DC movies, and
yeah,
most of my friends don't. But I like Marvel films as well. I just want a good film, you
yeah.
know. And for me, with the Marvel, they've always been weaker in the animated department than
They have.
DC, which is confusing for us DC fans going, why don't you just take those animated film writers and make them the live action writers because they do it so well.
They do. I think I would say my only complaint about so I did actually get to interview Jason O'Mara, who
Mm,
was the Batman for I guess the new 52
right.
inspired kind of animated movies that came out, where they brought in Damian Wayne, which I'm very excited to see what James Gunn does with
With
Damian
him,
Wayne.
yeah.
He's a very good character.
Mhm.
The only complaint I have is they tend to be too short,
Mhm.
ironically
Yeah.
to me. Like I feel like there was so much more story, and yet they I don't know, they just feel short to me. Like the Justice League Doom, that was actually Kevin Conroy, and they did bring back a lot of the voiceover actors from the animated series for Justice League Doom. I felt like that was really short. Like the conflict got resolved very quickly in that one. I did like it though. I didn't dislike it, but I just felt
Right.
like, oh, I could have watched another 45 minutes of this. What are you doing? And then yet you have the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, which again, like it, but I felt like that was 25 to 30 minutes too long.
I enjoyed it as well, but yeah, it did go long. It could have been trimmed, absolutely. But you can say that about a lot of those films.
Yeah.
The comic book films in general, many of them could be trimmed, and that's why when the Marvels came out, people are like, "Oh my God, it's only 90," And when I saw the Marvels, I'm like, I actually could have used about 10 more minutes of this film.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the writing and the character development. I think when something moves too fast without some character driven scenes, some of
Right.
the stakes get lowered because you're not as attached to the characters that are on screen that need to save the day. What's your take on the critique that there is superhero fatigue?
Uh, I yeah, I could see that. I mean, I see that, but I also think that the quality of the superhero material has gone down. So as much as there may have been fatigue, if it was better crafted, I think you wouldn't have as much. So it's kind of, it's kind of twofold. You do have the fatigue, which I think people are tired of. And second of all, I think the material just needs to be better because they kind of feed into each other. There's too much because of the streaming services and such that you have. They're trying to put out content and keep people, unfortunately. It's not just superhero fatigue. Disney Plus, I mean, the majority of the Star Wars series from Disney Plus have been lacking, where there was a lot more opportunity, and it has dwindled. Even in the Mandalorian series, if you watch that, the season 3 is definitely not as strong as season 1. And even with the comic book, Loki, I loved Loki. Loki season 2 was fantastic, and Loki season 1 was great too. But some of the stuff Marvel did in between was like, and it's not just because I like DC. Like I said, I just like entertaining stuff. But to me, that I enjoyed Blue Beetle. In all honesty, I like Blue Beetle, and I think why I enjoyed Blue Beetle that much is because it did what I wanted it to do, in that it didn't go huge scope. I mean, I'm sure because you cover all aspects of it.
Yeah,
The MCU and the DCU tried to keep up with the Joneses, and that hurt themselves. But the MCU especially,
correct.
the scope is so big, it seems like every movie has to be this epic, universal, like world-ending tragedy, whereas they forgot what started them all was the street level stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. I don't think people have superhero fatigue. I think they are just fatigued by the formula.
Mm-hmm.
They're finding the formula too predictable, and therefore it's boring. Because
Right.
if not that I have to be surprised and have a shock value every time, but if I can outline within the first 20 minutes your movie and what will happen and how it will end, I'm
Mm-hmm.
checked out, because
Yeah.
I already know where this is going. And I have zero interest in staying involved if you're not going to show me something. I don't want to say necessarily different, but just do it in a creative way that makes it feel unique. And
Right.
there are so many comic books out there that do that. That if you just, not that you need to copy and paste the comic book storyline, because it's a different artistic medium,
Sure.
and of course with adaptations, you're going to have to change a couple of things. But one of the best examples I give of people that are like, well, it's too formulaic, and I have to watch everything in order to understand everything. You didn't have to read the Lord of the Rings books to follow everything that Peter Jackson put
Right.
on screen. And
Mhm.
that's because, again, he had 2 years of pre-production work to make sure the scripts made sense and outline everything. And he could just, they talk about, actually, if you ever listen to the commentary, they talk about how they worked so hard and so many days and weeks
Mhm.
on the prologue of like, okay, what do we need to put in here? What is
Sure.
absolutely vital? What is going to help set up the stakes? We gotta put a lot of history but we just need to kind of whittle it down to there's a bad guy. He deceived people. Elves and men used to be friends, but because of what this one Isildur guy did, the rift is now there's no more, there's no alliance anymore. And now elves and men don't really talk to each other, and the ring kind of disappeared. And they put just enough in for us to understand of like, okay, I don't need to read the Silmarillion, I don't need to read the Hobbit, I get it. And then they spend just enough time in the Shire for us to kind of imprint on Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, because they're mostly our point of view characters in the next 3 films. So it is possible for you to watch something and feel like, I understand who these characters are, I understand the world, I understand the stakes, I'm on board, let's go.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is so many people are like, oh, we need an origin story. I'm like, you don't necessarily need one, because when you start doing superhero origin stories for every superhero, you start to see where the similarities are. There's some insert childhood trauma here.
Dead parent here, or dead parents, like
right.
One way or the other, somebody's dead.
There's some kind of trauma that happened here that drove them to be here. And it's like, we don't necessarily need to see that completely in a full movie dedicated to it. Sure, if you want to do flashbacks or mentioning or whatever, but get me into who this character is now, and then along the way, let's just explore where they came from, or do it maybe a little bit more in the second movie than the first. But
and I think that's one of the things that was strongest about the Spider-Man No Way Home crossover, is that they didn't kill Uncle Ben's already dead for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and then it's Aunt May that dies,
right?
Which is, sorry, spoiler alert for people that have not watched a movie that's a year and something. It's over a year at this point.
Over a year, yeah. It's like 2 years now, I think.
And that was something different. It's still a parent dying, but it was taken in a way that was unexpected.
Right.
And then Peter got some older brothers out of it, where they come in, and like it was just handled differently. It was familiar enough, and yes, there was some fan service, but it was fan service that served the plot and the narrative and what the character was going through. So I think that's why a lot of people accepted that as a circumstance of bringing back Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, which I loved it. I'll defend it. It was great.
Oh, I loved it. I loved that movie. I really enjoyed that film quite a bit. I loved the crossover and everything. But, some people would not take my opinion, because I honestly loved Multiverse of Madness, but being a horror guy, seeing a Sam Raimi just do another Sam Raimi film, I'm very happy about that.
There was only really 2 problems I had with the Multiverse of Madness. One is there was not enough Multiverse of Madness. I think we were in 3 different worlds. There was one montage, but like if you're going to have the title of Multiverse of Madness and you're Sam Raimi, then let's go for it, man. Let's just go all the way with that. Let's just lean even further into that chaos. Second thing is it did not correlate with WandaVision.
Right.
All of a sudden, like, we spent it 6 episodes? I don't remember.
Yeah, it was like 6 episodes, I think 6 or 8. I forgot.
Which I loved that show of WandaVision.
Yeah,
again, something different. It was showing how she was grieving. There was also consequences for the fact that she also was enslaving an entire town, and that was problematic. And that's great for character growth. But like at the end of that show, she was atoning and she was recovering from that, and she was setting off to better herself. And then the next time we see her is in, I know they tried to connect it with the after credits thing, but that, to me, that didn't, that was too weak. That was weak sauce. And then all of a sudden she's the bad guy in Doctor Strange. It just felt so jarring. I mean, I didn't mind her being the bad guy. I just think it didn't correlate.
Yeah, no, you feel like you're missing something development with her character wise of what I understand she was secluded, but it's like, well, this was really an abrupt turn of a character. We could have used
the book. It's the book that corrupted her. Yeah, I mean, no.
Okay, yeah, but
like no.
And again, I think that's where a lot of these, especially Marvel, kind of painted themselves into a corner of sorts of doing the connected multiverse. The first 10 years was fantastic. They had that planned out. Thank you. You could have stopped. you could have said, you don't necessarily need to keep connecting further and further, go back to kind of these individual pod stories and have them expand out again. But if you get something like the Eternals, where, you do this epic thing to where there's literally this cosmic titan body sticking out of the earth, and you never reference it again in
Yeah.
any of the other shows, yet they're all supposed to be in the same world. You're like, wouldn't somebody it wouldn't be so there'd be someone giving tours of it,
Yeah.
something, and I think that's where the 10-year plan was great, and they had their retcon reboot type of set when they got to Endgame, and they could have gone a lot of places, and then they decided to just try to keep going. And that, I think, made them weak, and now they're kind of resetting, though you still have Sony doing their thing. Everybody's kind of ignoring that. They're all like, only one MCU film, Deadpool 3, and I'm like, no, there's 3 other Marvel films coming out. They're not directly, but it's just an interesting time. And you mentioned the fatigue. I think they're pushing too much. It's back in my day, it took 2-3 years for a film to be made, and you're shooting it on film, so they had to be careful of what they were shooting. They couldn't just make edits a week before it's released. And
Yeah.
now you've got films 18 months turnaround time from when they're doing this to here, and you're like, 18 months, really? you know
I mean, I don't necessarily mind a quick turnaround if it's justifiable. I think with
Sure.
Marvel, when Endgame happened, I think from a strategic point of view, I would have taken a year off just
Mhm.
for people to
Sure.
speculate, because you want to build the hype up again. I think one of the best things that Batman does is that we don't get a Batman film every year.
Right. Mhm.
It takes a while to see Batman again, and I think that's done strategically so you can kind of start to crave for it again. And I think with Marvel, I think they got so excited, or what I would say cocky and confident. They were
Mhm.
like, oh, and then when Disney Plus comes out, we're just going to let you all know what we're doing here. We're going to unveil everything that's coming, instead of going a little radio silent for a year, just to
Mhm.
let it stew. And then I probably would have started with X-Men,
Yes. Mhm.
just
Yeah.
because I love X-Men. I know that X-Men's the most popular
Sure.
Marvel IP, to my
Mhm.
at least to my
I
knowledge. I
think
think
so, yeah.
Spider-Man, well,
Yeah.
Spider-Man
Well,
might be more popular than X-Men. But regardless, X-Men, everyone was so excited when Disney bought Fox. And I think, if and everyone was really excited. I think people are still excited to see what they do with X-Men, like real X-Men,
right.
not the Deadpool 3, which I feel like will be a one and done thing. I don't know. Don't quote me. I just feel like it might be, if
Yeah.
anything, it might be another thing, but like I'm excited to see what their 10-year plan is for X-Men, and not just,
Right.
oh, there's Kelsey, sorry, spoiler alert, here's Kelsey Grammer in a CGI beast form, but he looks like the 90s cartoon. And I don't know. Oh, look, here's Patrick Stewart as, Professor. Oh,
Yeah.
he's dead. Or look, there's Quicksilver. Oh, his name is Boner. Like, um, if I had the keys to the car of Marvel after Endgame, I would have gone radio silent for a
Mhm.
bit. Maybe not a year, because people are impatient. But
Yeah.
if I was like, no, you'll wait a year. I'm not going to say anything for
Mhm.
a whole year, and then I'm going to drop an X-Men movie.
Right. And
I would have.
that I think would have been a better that's where social media and the internet and such, while we do get wonderful programs like Beverages with Bev, and also adultish, that you also get so much noise out there that it feels like companies feel the need they have to share stuff in order to stay relevant. When I'm from the day where we got most of our movie news from magazines, and when the magazine was printed, it would have shots in the magazine that never made the movie,
Yep.
and it was old news, because it took a while to print. So you're looking at Cinema Fantastique going, oh, I'd love that shot. And you never see it in the movie. And you're like, aw, but you had to wait a bit, and they had to think out things of what they were going to release. And like you said, you were hungry. Batman came out, hungry. You had space in between your sequels. that were still a new thing in the 80s. You know, not everybody planned for sequels or franchises. And now it's literally one movie comes out and you're like, oh, well, we've got 3-movie deal signed already. And you're like, well, like with Captain America, it's like, oh, wait, you look on IMDb and you see, oh, wait, Chris Evans is scheduled for this Marvel, and this Marvel film. So I guess he survives at the end. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, that was my complaint about Black Panther is before the movie Black Panther came on, there was a trailer released of Infinity War, and there's Black Panther in the trailer. And then in Black Panther in the movie, they're like, oh no, did he die? I wonder if he'll come back. It's like, well, of course he didn't die. He's in the trailer that I just saw.
yeah.
And I get it. We're in a different world because of the internet and because there's a need for constant content. But I think Disney's just discovering that with all of their IPs that they own, where they could honestly rotate their IPs so they don't feel so saturated. I think it is possible to do that. I feel like Disney and Paramount and Sony and Warner Brothers, they all just feel this need to have constant content because they fear, because they all opened up their own streaming services, that they need to keep their subscribers. And if there's not something on the channel that engages their subscribers, they're going to bounce. And I get it, but I think the answer is just rotate your properties. Make sure that when Marvel is done, you got a Star Wars property ready to go. When Star Wars is done, don't even go back to Marvel. Go to a Pixar property. When Pixar is done, still don't go back to Marvel. Go to a Disney princess kind of original Disney animated film, and then go back to Marvel or something like that. And then you rotate. I mean, they own so many IPs now.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like you can rotate. You know, I get it. You got to have constant content, fine, but rotate your IPs. You know, keep the rotate and elongate the rotation. Tease things like they did. You're correct. The first 10 years of Marvel was great because, you know, you had Iron Man, and then I think after Iron Man was Captain America, correct? And then Thor, and then it went back to Iron. Oh no, wait, it was Iron Man, Captain America, then Iron Man 2.
Yep. And
then Thor, maybe. Yeah. I mean, but you know, you had to wait a full year or two before you got the next Iron Man movie.
Right. Or you even had to wait months before your next Marvel film. You didn't get 7. I think at one point I counted there was like one year there was 8 Marvel films or 8 comic book films total released in 1 year. It was like every month there was another one, and you're just like, oh man. And you're right with the properties. I mean, you know, 1 week sometimes you're watching Ahsoka and Loki, and you're watching, you know, this, and it's like it was hard to keep track. And I think rotating as well. And they own enough content. I mean, I'm a big physical media guy, but they've got enough in their library that they could fill with classic legacy stuff that I'm sure people would watch because they'd be like, oh, I've never seen this, and they choose it and watch it and keep them around.
I remember going on to Disney Plus for the first time and thinking, oh my God, I forgot this was even a Disney property. What was it? That Darn Cat or something like that. I was like, oh, that was a Disney property. What they could do is kind of what Netflix used to do, which is they would put a property on there temporarily, then take it out of the rotation and then bring it back. Disney just has everything, their entire catalog available 24/7, when they could make some of their retro stuff events of like, for a month, we're going to release Ever After, and then it'll be like a celebration of the Cinderella stories. And so it's like Brandy's Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella, the Kenneth Branagh Cinderella, the classic Cinderella, and Ever After. And it's like, we're going to have it on our platform for a month or 2, and then we're going to take it off, but don't worry, it'll come back during, I don't know. Don't know. I'm not a business person. I'm just saying that, like, there's got to be a way for them to satiate their fear about, if I don't have constant content, I'm going to lose subscribers. You know, I think there's a way to do it. You own Disney, of all properties, has enough IP in their catalog that they could find a way to make things feel like an event so they can take more time.
Well, I mean, and it's just like it's in comics. I've recently got back into comics. I bought a bunch of comics in the 90s. So I had Batman 500.
Nice.
And let me tell you, I knew it was coming, And when I opened up the panel of Batman, spoiler, folks, this is from the 90s. Come on. Where Bane breaks Batman's back, I
Yeah.
still caught myself go, no. And I'm like, it's a comic. And I'm sitting here going, no. You know,
Yeah.
and Superman getting killed by Doomsday. And then there
Yeah.
was this really weird 4 different Supermen. That was just a weird storyline altogether. But, you know, when they did crossover events back then too, you had Armageddon 2000, which I followed through the annuals, which was DC's way of ending Hawk and Dove. The whole purpose of it was to end Hawk and Dove. But you had Wave Rider in there, and they explored different things, but it was one event. And now you go to the comic book store, you know, there's crossovers constantly, there's special events it's like you're looking at it almost like what we're talking about with the streaming channels. You get on the shelf of your comic books, it's like, what do I pick to read? There's so much to pick and read, you know. And on one hand it's great, but on the other hand it can be overwhelming sometimes, because now your pull list is like this stack every
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that's kind of what happened with the X-Men comics for me. I kept buying the wrong X-Men comics. So I would open something up and like Jean Grey would be a teenager, and then I would open something up and Jean Grey is dead. And I was just like, wait, is Jean Grey alive or dead in this one? Like, it's always, that's the running gag. It's like, is Jean Grey alive or dead in this universe of X-Men?
And whereas I more appeal to the Elseworld type of stories. Like, I think one of my favorite stories,
Elseworlds are great.
I think one of my favorite stories that came out, it took them forever to finish, but was Dark Knights of Steel.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that was, I'm like, okay, fantasy setting, but all the DC heroes in certain, you know, in roles that made sense, and it was a great story. And I was like, that was one of the few comics when I got back into it to where I was waiting for the next issue the next month, because I'm like, I need to know what happens next.
I need to know.
You know, whereas there's other ones where I was like, oh yeah, I'm still reading this. But,
Indeed.
so who's your favorite X-Men then?
Okay. It's gonna sound so cliche,
Hmm.
but it is Jean Grey.
Oh.
And then my second favorite would be Wolverine, because and that's everyone's favorite. I know. I mean, I like other X-Men. I mean, I like Gambit. I like Storm. The only one I really don't like is Cyclops. And everyone has just told me that's because I haven't read the right comic for Cyclops. But I'm like, Cyclops is fine.
He's a character they never seem to really know what to do with him.
Yeah, because he's got to be the leader. So he's got to have a moral compass. But to me, it's like I never really. I like him better with like actually Emma Frost. I think they make a really cool couple. So that I feel that's so odd to say. Well, when he's with Emma Frost, he's more interesting. You know, I mean, I really, I also enjoy, depending on the comic and depending on what they're talking about, Magneto, I think, is a very compelling character, or just his relationship with Professor X, Charles Xavier, is great. That overarching, conflict they have and of opinions about what to do with humans and what to do with mutants. One wants to be the peacekeeper. One doesn't believe that anything will ever work out. And so that's always fun. That's always fun to kind of deal with that. But yeah, and that's why I take it so personally that they've just not done Jean Grey's Phoenix saga well at all in live action format. It's just they've messed this up now twice, to where I don't see the studios trying it again. When to me it's like, guys, you need it to be kind of in a series. You need a like, the problem is that the filmmakers are they're in a hurry to get to the Dark Phoenix part of the story, that they're not allowing the audience time to get to know what the Phoenix Force was, how it was a force for good, and how it slowly just got corrupted. And then you could introduce the Hellfire Club, which is the cool cast of characters. That's where you see Emma Frost in it for the first time. And then, when you kill off Jean Grey, there's stakes to that, because you've taken time to get the audience to love that character and see the dilemma with the other X-Men about, well, we don't know how to battle somebody that we love. kind of thing. It's a really well done storyline, and the movies have decided to botch it twice now.
And I that's what I don't get is you look at the source material you get that with video game movie adaptations. You're like, you have such great source material. How can you screw this up? Just take that and do that live. you know? So, oh, go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna say. So, if you like Jean Grey, it's funny you mentioned Jean Grey because I could never, and I feel bad, but I could never not associate Dark Phoenix with my viewing of X-Men 2 with my wife. We went to see it, loved it, and we had it was one of those where we normally sit in a section where there's 3 seats, and so her and I sit, and no one ever sits next because you don't want to be the odd person out. Or so we had this guy sit next to us, right? And he was into X-Men. I mean, you could tell he was excited for this movie. I was excited for him. And we're watching it. He was fairly quiet during the whole thing until you get to the end where they do the swooping over the water in X-Men 2, and you
and the
just
Phoenix.
little Phoenix. This guy, full volume, goes, "Oh, they're doing Dark Phoenix. They're doing Dark," and he just started and he was exploding. And I didn't know what it was, so I went home and Googled in that, and it seemed like such a big storyline, and for
It
them
is.
to not to do it right twice, from what you're saying, and from what my other friends are saying too, it's like, how do you not take that source material and just take it and be able to translate it properly? It doesn't,
Because
make a
they're
lot
in a
of
hurry to
sense.
gloss over everything.
Sure.
The fact that X-Men The Last Stand kind of just didn't even acknowledge X2 because it was a different director. And they just decided to make it a bipolar disorder. It was that, first off, that was just offensive. It was like, okay, no. Phoenix, it's not her second personality. Phoenix is a cosmic being. Hush your mouth. Stop it. So that's where Phoenix first got botched. The second one, I didn't even bother watching because the reviews were so bad, and so many people on my network were like, "This is insulting to the Phoenix saga." I'm like, well, now I just don't want to get angry. I'm going to throw something now, because at least they did make it a Phoenix Force but again, she went immediately evil. And
that film was such a mess. It was really a mess. And I watched it. I'm like, wow. I'm like, okay, you kind of lost me with Apocalypse, and now I'm really like out.
The last great X-Men movie, and I'm not talking about Logan because I feel like that's a separate thing. Was X-Men Days of Future Past.
Yes, I really enjoyed that one.
I really enjoyed that. I loved how they combined the two casts together. I enjoyed bringing in the Sentinels. I enjoyed how well each character was kind of, even though the cast was so heavy, like there was a lot of people there, it still, I felt, handled everyone really, really well, except for poor Storm, who for some reason, poor Halle Bailey. God damn it. Halle Berry.
It's okay. I do that too sometimes.
Everyone did it when Halle Bailey got cast as Ariel. Everyone kept saying Halle Berry, and it was just the internet had a good time with that.
Oh yeah.
But Halle Berry, she her character just didn't have a lot to do besides do some cool effects, and I would say that's a fair criticism. It really is. But besides that, X-Men, X2, and X-Men Days of Future Past, I will also say X-Men First Class is fine. As well. But those are really great, solid X-Men films. I think where X-Men Last Stand falters, besides the stupid Phoenix plot, is it's almost like the studios were like, well, Wolverine's the most popular character, let's have him lead X-Men, and I'm like, that's kind of not his jam. That's not in his character. He doesn't want to be a leader. He doesn't want to do motivational speeches. He wants to do the quippy remarks in the corner, and then begrudgingly do it because he does want to be a team player. He just doesn't want to lead. He doesn't want to be responsible. He's the loner.
He is the loner. I always like Wolverine's attitude quite a bit. So
Yeah.
it was always fun. And yeah, you're right. Logan is its own thing, which was wonderful to see them take a chance like that. You know, you get those one-offs, like they're like one-offs in comics too. It's like you get the one-off story where they do something different, either Logan or you get Joker. You know,
Yeah.
and I like seeing alternate explorations into characters. So you know, hopefully maybe we'll get some more of that now that it's kind of like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be cranking out these same 5 characters, especially when you have a library huge of characters. You're sticking to the same ones constantly.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
like it's like, no, bring back more. So what would you say Jean Grey's favorite drink is?
Ooh, I would say it's wine.
Wine.
I would say it's a rosé
Mhm.
because she's constantly battling with the light and the dark in herself.
Nice, nice. A rosé. I'll have to let my wife know that. She's like, so
Yeah, and
if
then tell her like, and then have her explore what kind of rosé, because some rosés can be on the sweet side, some can be on the
right.
dry side. I think Jean Grey is constantly trying to battle what is
Mhm.
perfect, like a nice balancing act of both.
I could see her sipping wine, you know, in the X-Men hideout there, just sipping wine, trying to fight with herself and debate which way she wants to go today.
Yep.
It's like,
I mean, people would say if she were a beer, she'd be a dark and stormy.
sure.
But then I would want to give that to Storm, but then that's so on the nose
Yeah.
that like let's not, you know,
Yeah. Exactly.
that kind of
Exactly.
thing. And then I
Eh,
feel like
oh, go ahead.
oh no, and then I feel like Logan would be just like whiskey straight up,
Yeah. He's
you
a
know,
whiskey guy. He's just a straight
whiskey
up.
guy, whiskey or bourbon, either
Yeah.
or, same thing. No,
Goes
I'm
good with
sorry.
a cigar. Goes good with a
Yeah,
cigar.
there you go. There you go.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Victoria, for talking.
Of course.
You know, Beverages with Bev is now on Tubi, right?
Correct.
The one full season. Have you shot second season yet, or are there plans for the second season so
There is
far?
plans for a second season. We can't announce anything yet because we're still
Sure.
working out what
Mhm.
cons we're going to go to, because we want to expand out from New York and San Diego. Although we love them dearly and would like to still go back to them, but we're still planning on a second season and adding more conventions to it for sure. And the one thing to point out is with Tubi, what's great is that you do not need to purchase a subscription and you don't
Right.
even need to sign up. You can actually just click the links or Google Beverages with Bevin on Tubi and start watching for free. The only benefit of, creating an account is that it saves the history of you watching things. Otherwise, that's what's great about Tubi is that it's not trying to take your money. They're taking money elsewhere and they're not trying to get you to sign up. And that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I'm a big indie film guy, especially indie horror, and Tubi's just been a wonderful source of that.
Yeah.
Everybody is getting their film on Tubi now, which is great to get it out there for people to watch for sure. And you also have the website though, correct? Beverages with
Yes.
Bev.
Yeah,
Uh,
beverageswithbevin.com, where you can follow the links to any of the episodes there as well.
Fantastic. And where can they keep up with you and the massive amount of work you're constantly doing?
Yeah.
You got some socials there?
Yes, I do. It's well, I technically have a Twitter account, but I don't use it. And I technically
Sure.
have a TikTok account, but I rarely use it. And I also have a Facebook, but I don't really use it. So Instagram
Instagram.
is the way to go. And that is Bevin Bat Spice, because if I were a Spice Girl, I would be Bat Spice
That's
because
nice.
I love Batman. And that is where my Linktree account is. And I'm constantly posting Beverages with Bevin clips of all the wonderful over 50 guests that I had. They're all wonderful, they're all different, they're all unique. I highly recommend, giving it a watch.
Did you have a favorite drink from this season that you had?
Oh, I mean, not to oh man. All right, yes, I
You,
do. Well,
you're gonna plug the brand. That's fine. You can.
no. Okay, so I'm going to be fair and say that because Voodoo Ranger was our official beer sponsor, I will say that my favorite beer was Juice Force.
Okay.
from them. I drank a lot of their Voodoo Ranger beer. So Juice Force was definitely my favorite. But my favorite cocktail was the old fashioned with my boss Ryan Ari at Screen Crush. Old fashioned was definitely my favorite.
Yes. I remember one of the tasting videos they used to have where they used to have people from one region try food from another region. And so they had people from California trying food from the Midwest, basically. And everybody was like, brats, herring. Oh my God. Saw some people get sick over that, but everybody loved the brandy old fashioned.
Absolutely, except for alcoholics that are sober. So
well, yeah,
but yes, old fashioned is where it's at. It's a great winter and fall drink too.
It's a great year-round drink. Let's put
yes, yeah. All right, fine. All right.
Well, thank you very much, Victoria. Folks, check it out. Lots of great stuff there. Put links in the body of the description for this podcast and everything. And this has been a pleasure. And if you ever want to come back or whatnot, I'd love to talk to you again.
I'm in. I'll be back.
Fantastic.